Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to another one of our TCR dialogue. We have a special dialogue with Mr. Cedric Richmond, Senior Advisor to the President of the United States, moderated by Antoine C. Wright. Before we begin, we'd like to have a brief introduction from Mrs. Jacqueline Dupont Walker, our Connectional Director of Social Action. Ms. Dupont Walker.
Thank you, Editor Thomas, and welcome to the listening audience from the African Methodist Episcopal Church around the globe. Today, we have someone who is well known to us, Congressman Cedric Richmond, who has served with a stellar record in the U.S. Congress and now has distinguished himself to be selected as the Senior Advisor to President Biden and also as the Director of Public Engagement in this current administration. We have a long awaited a day when we could see people who look like us, folk who look like us making decisions, because we know we find a way to include everyone. But I want to just introduce him today using some of the words I heard from him last week as he came to speak to the faith community in a teleconference. He said that he would lead by listening. And there's nothing more important than hearing the people who you represent. But then he went to the old song that we all know, I don't feel no ways tired. And so Congressman Richmond is saying to us, he is ready for the task that is before him. He talked about what he wanted to bring to this administration and what he saw in the person who we have voted to lead this country and what he brings in terms of the integrity to that office. This is an administration that brings purpose over politics, a focus on people over profits, and a president over all, who is not only a trusted messenger, but brings a trusted message. All that he said about the president is what we see in Mr. Richmond. He is one of us. And as he talked about, Lord, don't move the mountain, we want to say to you from the African Methodist Episcopal Church today, we commend to you Matthew chapter 17, verse 20, where the Lord has said, we can move the mountain. And we will be with you to partner in moving the mountain, to a conversation today that we might hear not only his words, but from his heart. We bring to you Senior Advisor to President Biden, Congressman Cedric Richmond.
Thank you, Ms. Jacqueline Dupont Walker, and thank you to all of you who are listening from literally around the world. I bring you greetings from the 7th Episcopal District down in God's country, South Carolina, where Bishop Samuel Green and Supervisor Green is my bishop. I would be crazy if I did not recognize the 133rd elected and consecrated bishop to this church, my uncle and my aunt, Supervisor C. Wright and Bishop C. Wright. Thank you for always being a strong wind of encouragement to me. I am so thrilled and happy to have someone who I reference in private and in public, even when he does not claim me as my big brother. There's no secret the relationship that Cedric Richmond and my political father, Jim Clyburn, enjoy, but it is also no secret. Cedric is the former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, a Morehouse man, a father, a husband, served in the state legislature down in Louisiana, a lawyer, and someone, as I told the young lady from Politico last week, someone who I believe represents the best of this little idea called America. And so Mr. Director, we welcome you to the Christian Recorder Dialogue.
Well, let me just thank everybody for being here. We can get straight into a back and forth. Antoine, thank you for inviting us all into your kitchen with your background. But, you know, part of what Ms. Jacqueline said, look, I am really happy to be part of administration where we know it's not about us. It's about the people. And I have a president who doesn't care about credit. He doesn't have an ego. He's not trying to grandstand. He just really wants, at the end of the day, to be a transformative president. And I think that that is a very special attitude, and it says a lot about him. And so that's how we're approaching this administration. And so right now, in the middle of this pandemic, where people are catching it both ways, and as my grandmother used to always say, if it ain't one thing, it's another. So if it's not the health scare of COVID-19, it's the economic scare of foreclosure, eviction, homelessness, hunger. We never thought we'd see a day where between 1 in 5 and 1 in 7 Americans feel that they don't have enough food to eat and that they're food insecure. And so we have to come together and do something about it. And I think that our administration is in the right place to do this. We're going to treat it with the seriousness of purpose that it deserves. And we're going to try to save lives and improve lives. So that's kind of where we are. So thank you all for having me. And I look forward to a robust conversation.
Mr. Richmond, let's first talk about your faith, your personal relationship with the church in general. I know you're a friend of the AME Church and certainly a friend of my family. But if you can talk about your faith journey, I've attended a number of worship services with you. In fact, the last time we attended church together was at AME Church out in Iowa. Talk about, one, your faith, but also the importance of the Black church having a relationship with this White House and staying engaged and involved past the campaign period.
Look, I think it's important. Look, I grew up in Mississippi. My grandfather was the trustee of the church. You know, he owned a funeral home. I guess, you know, it was a good business decision. But, you know, we grew up going to revival. And, you know, I thought we went to church every day, all day. And then when we moved to New Orleans, I actually switched over and grew up from you know, the Baptist Convention to Southern Baptist. And then as I got a little bit older, we went to full gospel. But, you know, I think that the faith and the strength and the courage and all of that comes from having a relationship with God is important, and it's what we need. And we need to remember that as we govern. I think that needs to be a focus. And so, you know, that's why I always, you know, there's a long story to why I don't quote Bible verses, but I do quote the Psalms. And when you're in that time of need, and when you need that encouragement, if you just think back to either Bible verses or those hymns that will get you through it, you know, nobody promised that this world wouldn't have obstacles and mountains, but we know we have the strength, we have the faith, and we have somebody who's going to help us get over those obstacles. And so, and it reminds us that we have to build a bridge for that person coming behind us. So at 16, and I shortened it up, Antoine, but at 16, when I couldn't play sports at the playground anymore, the coaches over there came to me and said, look, Cedric, you one great player, you're doing well in high school, but you're too old to play in recreation now. But here's the good news. Here's a team of bad 13-year-olds we want you to coach. And I started coaching that day at 16, and I never really stopped. And so, but it was about mentoring and having a relationship with young people where you could sow into their lives. And so, you know, it shapes many of my decisions. And, you know, being with my grandfather and him owning a funeral home certainly shaped me going to law school and not into the family business. So, back to you, Antoine.
Cedric, you were very much so responsible for, in my view, of now President Biden getting into the presidential race. You were his national co-chair. Now you're a senior advisor to the president, Office of Public Engagement. Talk us through the then, the now, and really add some meat on the bone to your role in this administration, in this White House, and what that means for a lot of constituencies and communities around the country.
Sure. Look, when Donald Trump was elected and I was chair of the Black Caucus, we went meet with Donald Trump. And I knew right then and there that we were in a world of trouble, that he did not have the intellectual capacity to do it, nor did he have the desire to be a president for the whole country and care about people who really needed help. And so a lot of times in this life, we get knocked down, and we get knocked down to the point where we don't have the capacity ourselves to get back up, and government has to be there to help, like the 11 million people who are unemployed right now through no fault of their own. And so when we got to 2017, I went to the vice president. I said, look, we have to win the House back. We have to have some checks on this guy in the White House and this Republican Party. And so the vice president understood the need. He volunteered. He went all around the country for us. He did radio spots and all of these other things just to help Democrats win back the House so that we could protect vulnerable communities and and our democratic principles. And so we did that. And then I started to sit back and say, he was the only person that could go to every district. We didn't have to worry about him having a negative, or he can't go here, it's too liberal. He can't go here, it's too conservative. He could go everywhere. And so I met with him and I said, look, you know, you may be the only person in the world that can beat Donald Trump. And he had sort of an interest, and then Charlottesville happened. And he said, you know, this country has to be better than this. And we're going to restore the soul of this country. We're going to unite the country. And when we announced, remember, his video was restoring the soul of the country. People laughed at us and said, well, you know, Americans are not ready for that. They don't want that. They don't want unity. And so we ran, we won, and joining the administration, Antoine, I think you know this, I didn't have an interest in coming in the administration. I was a congressman. I was minding my own business. I was going home to play with my son every weekend. I didn't work from 8 to 8 every day. And so, but on one of those trips, I was with him, and he said, after we won, he said, Cedric, look, you know where I am. You know what I want to accomplish, and I want your help to try to get there. And long story short, over the 2 years on the campaign with him, I got to really know him. And I know he wants to be the most transformative president that we've ever had, including Lincoln. It doesn't matter. He wants to empower more people in this country than have never been empowered before. And the other thing he wants to do is make sure that minority communities are the co-architects of their future. We're not going to help minority communities in spite of themselves. We're going to invite them to the table as partners and let them be the architects of doing it. When it comes to the faith-based community, we're going to recognize the importance that they have and the role they play in society. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you need a good way to fight crime, then you fund those after-school programs that churches have, because we all know that an idle mind is a devil's playground, and we need to provide those resources. But we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to wait for some nonprofit to come in our community, a transplant from somewhere else. We have the capacity and ability to do it on our own. And so, and racial equity, he did not mind saying on the campaign trail that he wanted to break down systemic racism and deal with it. And so, you know, when I talked to him, he said, look, I really want to get this done, but I think I need your help to get it done. And so that was the guilt trip of all guilt trips. And so, you know, now I'm here working from getting here before 8 and leaving after 8. But, you know, it's for a good purpose. It's for a good cause. It's for a good man and woman, Vice President Harris. And I think we're all going to be that transformative administration. First of all, we're going to beat COVID. And the last administration had no idea and no plan to do it.
Mr. Director, you touched on it, and I'm gonna toil the soul a little bit. COVID, this pandemic, the worst pandemic since 1918, caused some of the most social economic challenges we've seen perhaps since 1932. The disproportionate impact on communities of color, and now even vaccine distribution has found its way having some similar challenges. Talk about your role in dealing with the pandemic, the response, but also just in general, the strategy behind really trying to break the grip of this pandemic and that it has on this country.
Well, look, let me just start by talking about the fact that we lost over 500,000 Americans. That's far too many people weeping. That's far too many people wiping tears. And that's far too many people consoling loved ones. And so, you know, Antoine, that I had COVID-19. I had it around Christmas, and I was blessed. I had a very mild case, almost no symptoms at all. But I was isolated in a room by myself, and I could hear my son and my wife in the living room and all around the other parts of our house, but just not in my room, which my son appropriately called the Rona room. But what it made me realize was all the people who didn't make it, who spent their last days isolated from family that they know were close, family that they wanted to say their goodbyes and hug and kiss and do all of those things, but could not do it. And that was the hardest part of having it, is knowing that your family's right there, but they can't comfort you. They can call you on the phone, but it's not the same. And so that's why we want to stop the human toll that it's having, and in our health and the number of fatalities. But then on the economic side, we know that it is, causing another separate crisis and pandemic in terms of the economics. When you have, over the course of this, almost 30 million people have lost a job. People have lost health care. People have lost small businesses. People have lost their savings. And so that's why we have a $1.9 trillion bill. Yes, it's a lot of money. Everybody's complaining. Well, I'm sorry, let me stop. Republicans on the Hill are complaining it's a lot of money. Yes, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money because it is a big problem. And it's a problem that cost $1.9 trillion to fix. And we're not going to keep doing what the Republicans did during the last administration by doing too little, too late. We're gonna deal with this, and our commitment is to deal with it once and for all. And that's what we're doing, because we know and we see what it's doing to too many families, too many communities, especially the havoc that it's having on our children and working women. I mean, look, our kids are doing virtual school, which means somebody has to be home with them. And if a kid doesn't have the capacity to do, whether he doesn't have, broadband, whether he doesn't have a smart device, the have-nots are getting left further and further behind. And we disproportionately make up the have-nots. And so we have to deal with that, and we're willing to deal with that. And it's going to cost $1.9 trillion. We're going to pass the bill. We're going to fix the problem. And then we're going to, get the economy back going. And at some point, it'll pay for itself. But right now, we're not going to leave anybody behind. And so, yeah, we ask for $160 billion so we can make sure every neighborhood, every zip code, every barbershop, anybody we know can get the vaccine. So, that kind of sums up, our thinking about COVID.
So you flirted with it, but let's date it for a little bit. The American Rescue Act. I wrote a few days ago for The Hill, bipartisan buy-in to the American Rescue. This $1.9 trillion plan that you just flirted with will literally, I think, press the refresh and the restart button for this country in many ways. But as you know, we all have small political digestive systems. There's a buffet of items in it. All of us can't process it. Can you touch on some of the things that's in the rescue plan that people can understand and articulate in their homes, at the barbershops, at the beauty salons, at the nail salon, at the sorority meeting, fraternity meeting, etc., so we can be informed while we find ourselves engaged?
Yeah, look, I can give you some top line stuff. The $1,400 that we're going to give to people who need it, and we're going to include the middle class. We're going to do direct payments to Americans who have been hard hit by COVID-19, and that's going to cost a couple $100 billion. We're going to give $350 billion to state and local governments so that they can make sure that frontline workers continue to work, make sure that police and firefighters can be paid. We know that revenue is down for all of these cities and states, and we have to make sure that they don't have to cut vital services, because we know when they cut, our communities lose. We're going to put $135 billion in there to make sure that K through 12 schools can reopen. We want more than half of them open by the end of our first 100 days, which means making sure teachers can have access to PPE, make sure that the buses are not that crowded, classes are not that crowded, that the ventilation systems are working well, that we can put up partitions and dividers to make sure that we don't have a spread, and that we're testing to make sure that everyone is safe, and that when somebody contracts it, we can trace it and do all of those things. $20 billion so we don't leave our veterans behind. $400 a week in supplemental enhanced unemployment benefits for the 11 million that are unemployed. We have billions in there for nutrition assistance programs. We're going to raise SNAP benefits for those people who are on SNAP, because we know right now food costs a little bit more, and people are at home and they're having to provide more food. Kids are not eating at school, they're eating at home. We're also going to increase the earned income tax credit and increase the child tax credit. which by itself would reduce child poverty by 50% in this country. And so the American Rescue Plan on its own reduces poverty in the African American community by 34%, reduces poverty in the Hispanic community by 40%. So we're going to keep working, and that's just where we are and what we're doing.
Your job in the Office of Public Engagement bumps up against a number of agencies. We now know this administration has one of the most diverse cabinets in American history. You are the highest ranking African American in the White House. What does this mean for you personally and professionally, Cedric, and how you govern yourselves accordingly within this administration?
Truth is, I never thought about where I ranked in the White House, and I didn't realize it until you just said it. But I'll just tell you this, that we have a very diverse team, but we have a very capable team. We have the best of the best in this White House, and they just happen to be people of color and women. So like Susan Rice, bar none, is outstanding, and she's over the Domestic Policy Council. And I would suggest that you could go look for anybody, red, green, white, purple, and you're not going to find anybody better than her. If you look at our vice president, if you look at her staff, if you look at the cabinet nominees we picked, Regan for EPA, young brother, dynamic, you're not going to find anybody better than him. If you look at Marsha Fudge at Housing and Urban Development, Black woman, former national president of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, you're not going to find anybody better than her. If you look at Ambassador Thomas, you're not going to find anybody that has more experience and ready to be ambassador to the UN. If you look at CC Rouse, that is going to be in the cabinet, Black woman, phenomenal. If you look at General Austin, who is the first African American to be head of the Secretary of Defense, all historic people, but all very qualified and ready to lead. And so it makes it exciting to be able to be a part of that team and make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction and pushing for the same thing. So it's exciting. And at the end of the day, it may even be a competition to see who can do more for minorities than anyone else. And, I think the president wants that to be across the board, which is why one of his first executive orders was a whole of government racial equity executive order. So, we're serious about it. And look, it's really, really refreshing to have a president that is not scared to use the word poverty, not scared to use the word racism, not afraid to use the word equity. And his actions are showing that. And I think that, it's going to be an exciting time. It's going to be a wild ride, but it's going to be good.
Cedric, the gospel according to Cedric Richmond, chapter 1, verse 1. You cannot govern if you do not win. I repeat it often. I give you your credit when I can. Sometimes I don't. I use it as my own. That's okay. We have razor-thin majorities in the House and the Senate. Talk about what that means for the Biden-Harris administration's agenda, and give us a shot of what some of those priorities and legislative agenda items look like.
Here's what a razor-thin majority means. It means we need the faith community propping us up. We need the faith community reminding elected officials, both Democrat and Republican, that politicians worry about the next election. Statesmen and stateswomen worry about the next generation, and that you all are demanding that people in Congress be statesmen and stateswomen and take the hard votes, do the hard things that impact people who need it the most. And so that's what the thin majority means. But as far as our agenda, we're going to push our agenda. Some things we're going to lose on, but for the most part, we're going to win, and we're going to make sure that our wins mean something for the people in the country and minorities in the country. So that's why we were not scared to do a $1.9 trillion bill to start with. And we're going to keep on moving with infrastructure next. And you'll see us make statements on a number of things, and from policing to housing discrimination to, Black maternal health, where our women are dying disproportionately higher in childbirth. You name it, we're going to tackle it. And so we're not afraid of the thin majority, but we're going to need your help with it, and that's just the truth.
Congressman, I got a few more questions because I know you're taking your lunch break to do this. Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, you served with her in the Congress. Now you work with her in the White House. First time a Black woman is the Vice President of the United States. HBCU grad like you, member of the Links, AKA former prosecutor. Her resume is a catalog of accomplishments that so many people prayed to one day see. What does that mean for you and for the country?
It means a lot. Look, we're all a product of our life experiences, and she's the product of a single mother that many of the people in this country are. She is someone who has had to face adversity. She's someone who had to face discrimination. She's somebody who had to break barriers and glass ceilings and all of these things through her life. And I think that those life experiences, she knows, helps as she makes decisions and who she fights for. She understands that people who can look like her, go to HBCUs, can compete with anybody in the world, given the support and the assistance, which is why we want to give so much money to HBCUs, increase Pell Grants and all of those things. But she is an awesome partner. She is tough as nails. And, she doesn't run from a fight, but she's also guided by principle and she's guided by her faith. And I think that that's important. And despite her going to Howard, we don't hold it against her because she couldn't go to Morehouse. So Howard is a very good alternative. But she's just great, and it's really refreshing to have two leaders who are guided by what's right and wrong, as opposed to what's easy, what's hard, or what glorifies and magnifies them as a person, as opposed to what helps the masses.
I said in 18 that would be the most consequential midterm election of my lifetime. I didn't lie because it was consequential at the time. 2022, perhaps, maybe the most consequential midterm for a Democratic president. And I say that with all due respect to President Obama in 2010. How is this White House and this administration preparing to have something to be able to sell to the American people that they benefited from a Biden-Harris administration?
Well, look, we have to, 2022 is going to be, it's right around the door, and people are going to have that Janet Jackson test, which I live by. What have you done for me lately? What difference did it make that Biden won the presidency? I think we're going to be able to start by saying we beat COVID. We got the economy jump started. We invested in infrastructure and created millions of jobs. But at the same time, we lifted people out of poverty. We fought systemic racism. We empowered women and minorities all across this country. We invested in our children. We gave our teachers a pay raise. There's a whole list of things that we want to be able to tout that we did in 2022 to make sure that we don't have what happened to us happen to Obama, and that is Republicans take over the House and just stop his agenda and progress midstream and not hide the fact that their whole goal was to be obstructionist to President Obama. And so we're very serious about making sure that people know what we do. And so you will see us a little bit different from President Obama. We're telling people what we're going to do. Then we're doing what we said we were going to do. Then we're going to go back and tell people that we did what we told them we were going to do. And I think that that is important. And we're going to make sure that people understand what difference it made that we were in the White House compared to if somebody else was in the White House.
You will be the chief salesperson, the face, the chief representative for the agenda of this administration to every constituency around the country, including some of the cabinet agencies. What does that look like for you, Mr. Richmond, as we plow forward in some what could be some unique times?
Well, the truth is, I don't want to be the face. I want the agencies to do what they're supposed to do. I want those cabinet secretaries to understand the mandate that the president gave them, which is to go make the difference in the lives of people, to break down systemic racism, sexism, and everything else that all of the discriminatory practices. Go find a way to make people's life better. And so, look, it's not rocket science. And, my grandmother, both of my grandmothers, one of which was a HBCU grad, one of which could not read, but they both basically said the same thing. If you can help somebody, help them. And I don't care if it's getting them housing, and people call it affordable housing. Who cares? Get them to a doctor if they're sick. And if people call it Medicaid or Medicare, who cares? If people are hungry and you get them food, who cares if they call it food stamps or SNAP or WIC or something else? My grandmother always said, if somebody is in need, help them. And that's what we plan to do. And we will help them to the extent that we don't just give them those things. We're going to empower them that they won't need those things anymore. They'll be able to do it on their own.
Lastly, the AME Church enjoyed a very handsome relationship with the Obama administration. Very much so touch and go, very engaged and involved. How can we relight that relationship to make sure that the AME Church has a seat at the table and not find themselves on the menu like they were in the last administration?
Well, they could start by sending a better representative than you. No, look, the office of we have Office of Faith-Based and Community Partnerships, which is led by Josh and then Trey Baker, both off of my team. But the head of that office is Melissa, who did it under President Obama. And I think that, we want your input. We don't just want your output. And so there's going to be a real relationship. And, I think that it'll be just as good, if not better, as the relationship you had under President Obama. We all know that President Biden is a very spiritual man and guided by faith, strong Catholic. And so he's going to make sure that we're keeping our relationship and his relationship with the faith-based community solid.
So, I'm AME, so when we say we got one closing, there's always another, but this really is the last one. It's Black History Month. I asked Congressman Clyburn this on CBS yesterday. I just got off an event with Benny Thompson a few minutes ago about if you can look back over your life and think about events, whether it's one or more, or people that have helped shape and mold you to who you are today, that person and that event would be what?
Well, look, and this is, I cut it down to a funny story, but, I went to the 5th best public school in the country. It was 60% white, probably 35% black, and then 5% Vietnamese, but it was the best school in the state, 5th best in the country. And I went to speak at a convention. They were like, well, who was your favorite teacher then? I started laughing, and I couldn't stop laughing. And they were like, well, who was your favorite teacher? Who molded you the most? Who did this? And I said, that's Greg Bryant. They said, well, what subject did he teach? He was the head custodian at my school. But you know what? If I had a good basketball game, I walked in the gym, he'd be like, oh, good game last night. Here's some things you could work on. If one of the teachers told him I was goofing off, he'd pull me on the side and give me a kick in the butt and say, look, man, what are you doing? You're too talented to be goofing off. You're wasting your potential. You're wasting your talent. And so he was that guy that gave me a hug when I needed a hug, gave me a kick in the behind when I needed a kick in the behind, pushed me and really said, Cedric, there are no limits to what you can accomplish if you put your head to it and your mind to it. And so that was a janitor at a school. And, I can still see him in the back of my mind with all those keys on his waist walking around the school. But he was a great basketball player himself. And, every day I found myself looking for him, and he was looking for me to just give me different nuggets and advice. And so he played a very big part in my life. And I'm glad you brought him up. I need to, as soon as this COVID stuff is over, invite him to the White House so that people across the country can understand that you can make a difference in somebody's life no matter who you are. And that no matter who you are, there's always somebody watching you to see what you do because they look up to you. So that's who it would be.
Little black boys with dreams grow up to be men with vision. That's Cedric Richmond, my friend, the senior advisor to the President of the United States. Mr. Richmond, on behalf of the AME Church, the Christian Recorder, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
John Thomas, I'll turn it back over to you. John Thomas, I'll turn it back over to you, my friend.
And I was muted. Thank you, Antoine. Let us thank you for bringing in Mr. Richmond. We've been given some marching orders, and I'd like Ms. DuPont Walker to give a brief commentary before we get to our announcements. I know you have things to do, so we're going to hear from Ms. DuPont Walker now, and then we're going to move to our announcements. DuPont Walker.
Thank you, Editor. Thank you, Editor Thomas, and thank you, Mr. Seawright, for an engaging interview. The Congressman reminded us of our heritage in 1793. When the AME Church came to the rescue of those people suffering from the yellow fever epidemic. We have that role in 2021 with the COVID-19 crisis. We are here and we are engaged. And so we pledged with this administration to ensure that we are there for all the people in all of the disenfranchised communities and to not let anyone forget the African Americans who may be suffering with the pandemic, but more than anything else, working with others to find solutions. We have heard him talk about the America Rescue Plan, and the Social Action Commission will be keeping the AME Church informed on what can happen. We are proud of the work of our International Health Commission that has put in place the model document toolkit for reentry, but also in getting through the pandemic to know how we can minister and service in our communities. And we offer that to the Biden administration and to the nation. We are ready to partner as we always have. We thank this administration for remembering our walk and our legacy, and we claim it not just to brag, but to understand that the shoulders on which we stand expect us to work. The AME Church is ready to move forward with the Domestic Policy Council, with the senior advisor to the president, and to speak truth to power. So know that we come not just to hear, but to bring the word from the street, the word from the people. And we believe that we represent that voice. So we thank you for this opportunity to be on the front end. And we expect to be present in those weekly briefings with the Office of Public Engagement and Faith Partnership. And we pledge to continue to speak to you what you need to hear in order to be that transformative administration that we believe you can be on behalf of the people. This is a call to action, and we accept it.
Thank you, Ms. DuPont Walker. And, you know, we keep our members informed, and you will be hearing a lot more from us. Now for our announcements. Our next dialogue will be on March the 4th with Derek Johnson, President and CEO of the NAACP. We encourage you to support the Christian Recorder. And as editor, I tell you that these productions aren't free. So you can support us by buying a subscription for $36 a year. It's still $36 a year. So you can visit thechristianrecorder.com for more information. Also, please sign up for our bi-weekly emails to stay informed. We want to make sure that you know what's going on in our connectional church. The Christian Recorder, the AME Church Publishing House, and we encourage you to support them for your church, school, and worship needs. Visit amecpublishing.com. Today at 5 p.m. will be the church school training for the spring curriculum. You can access that training via the AME Church Publishing House Facebook page, the AME Church School group, and we will be sending out an email for an hour before the training with the Zoom link. There is no registration required. So if you've been going to the church school on Sunday, you already have the Zoom link, but nonetheless, you can get it from that email or from Facebook. We also, as you know, we are in the middle of a pandemic and our budget has been cut. And we are so thankful for our sponsors who help us to continue to bring great programming to you. We have an awesome lineup ready for March. And we want to thank the sponsors for today's broadcast: the Foster for Bishop 2021 campaign and the Eldridge for Connectional Treasurer 2021 campaign. Again, we thank you for being with us on this day. Please look forward for the next dialogues in March. Don't forget to visit the church school training, and we will see you next time.